When you buy a house at a country auction, you have to pay in cash. Well, not cash, but you have to have the money in the bank. We'd gotten the house more cheaply than we had any right to buy the property. People didn't seem to be much interested in this town. It was easier than it should have been. If hindsight is 20/20, we should have seen such low attendance for a county auction as the omen that it was. It was like the people here in the surrounding area knew something that I hadn't learned, even with all my research. There was no way, of course, to have predicted the woman in the wall, but we should have known that buying a home like this for pennies on the dollar was too good to be true. When we discussed the best way to unload the place, Ken put together a plan to get as much money out of it as we could. We were going to keep our plan of updating it. We had originally meant to do this over the course of years, as we continued to live in the property. That was not an option anymore. I managed to talk my mother into letting us borrow $20,000 from her retirement account the next morning. When I told her everything that happened, it was an easy convincing. She didn't think we should keep it either. The place was over 90 years old, and ideally I thought we should cut and go, but Kendrick insisted that if the place was fully updated and remodeled, we might be able to double the money we spent, and I reluctantly agreed. We could pay back my mother with interest, and actually come out very far ahead of where we'd been before all this. "We've done stuff like this before," Ken said. "I held my dad doing cabinets on the job site for years. Your dad's an actual carpenter. He taught you how to do a lot of this stuff already. You know how to do a countertop. You know how to remodel a bathroom. We can still do all of this ourselves." "Fuck, no," I told him. "Come on, think of what we'd save," Ken insisted. "No, absolutely not. Honey, fuck that. Fuck this shit. Fuck this fucking house," I said. "You didn't read that thing. We're not doing anything else to this place ourselves. I flat out refuse. A handyman can do all the updates you want, and we'll pay them to do it." I'm not going back there. In the end, I won that argument. At least, part of it. We wouldn't do the remodel ourselves, but we did have to go back there. All our stuff was still there. We needed to go back and retrieve it, and find another place to live while the house was repaired for sale. That morning, I reached out to Sheriff Downs, hoping that we would still be prevented from re-entering the property. It was a crime scene, after all. "Hello, this is William Cantor," I began. "You probably don't remember me, but of course she remembered me."
"Oh, Mr. Cantor, I remember you. Bradenville's a weird town, but it's not every day we find someone's skeleton inside a wall. Well, part of a skeleton,"
Sheriff Tawny Downs said. She laughed a genuine, full laugh. I found that incredibly unsettling because, for me, there was really nothing funny about any of this.
"I was just about to give you a call,"
she said. "Oh?"
"Yes, the two of you are clear to return to the property. There isn't much evidence there to collect. The previous owner has been missing for about 6 years. I can't say much on the subject because our investigation is still ongoing, but I think we both know how the DNA is going to turn out,"
she said. "And the diary?" I asked.
"The one you threw away?"
she asked, and I felt a tinge of guilt.
"Yes, I've got someone on that at the landfill, but I'm not sure if that will turn up."
I shouldn't have lied about it. I was too scared to think clearly at the time, and the man was still able to come and go as he pleased in our house. I only told the lie because if I told them I'd read the diary again, just moments before the body was discovered, and before I made the call to bring them out, found it missing again along with the note, they'd want some sort of explanation that I didn't have to give. "Oh yes, officers. You see, I threw it away a few days ago, not thinking much about it, and then suddenly there it was again on my desk this morning. Only now, Jack Nicholson has had his way with it. You know, all work and no play makes Jack a cannibal boy. Was written in it over and over again. It would have gone over like blaming your farts on the dog when you didn't actually have a dog." I couldn't have told them about the way it reappeared or the newly penned words. I couldn't produce the thing. It was just gone. I'd looked like a crackpot. Like there was something to hide. Besides, I'd buried it in the bottom of the trash can and it was picked up by the dump truck that same day. There was no way for it to have been on my desk that morning, and finding it there was so surreal that I wasn't even sure it was there at all. Not really. I had to lie. What other choice did I have? The new words on the pages flashed briefly through my mind then.
Mine shouldn't touch what's mine. Mine is mine, not yours.
It was written like that over and over and over, filling the last 20 pages or so where nothing was written before.
Mr. Cantor?
A small voice asked from far away. Yes, I'm still here. Sorry, I think I lost signal for a second. I lied to the sheriff. I seem to be making quite a habit of that these days.
What I was saying was that we went through the house very carefully, looking for any other evidence. There wasn't anything. Unfortunately, the extent of your clean-out, and then your clean-up, has kind of rendered anything else we might have found moot. Of course, there's no way for you to have known that when the two of you were cleaning up. If you'd known there was a lady in the walls when you'd bought the place, well, you'd be a suspect, and we'd be having a different conversation entirely.
She said, and shared another inappropriately timed laugh. So, are we free to go back there then? I asked.
Yes, that's why I was about to call you. I meant to do it yesterday when you were finished, but it slipped my mind. If some new information turns up, and we need to contact you again, we'll be in touch.
I thanked her, and told Kendrick we'd better go rent a moving truck because we were free to go back to the house, and that meant we would be moving all our things out. Somehow moving out took less time than moving in. Whether that could be credited to the majority of our things still being in boxes, or the number of times that Ken began to carefully pack some meaningless tchotchke, only to be interrupted by me asking, "Do we really fucking need that?" "What for? Just leave it." He believed me about the diary. At least, he said he did. But there was something about the place that he was still attached to, and unwilling to let go. More than once, I reminded him that the last woman who lived here was just found as a partial skeleton in the walls. We need to only pack what's necessary and get the fuck out of here before he comes back. He only tried to counter my argument with his insistence that there was no reason for the killer to come back here again one time. I wondered if he worried that the icy glare that I returned to him would freeze him solid. He didn't broach the subject again for almost 2 hours. "I guess what I don't understand is what happened to the rest of her," he said suddenly. "What do you mean? Why are we still talking about this? I told you what I read in that fucking book. He ate her. He started with her hair, band-aids, her trash. But how did part of her get into the wall?" "The fucking hole, Ken!" I was starting to really lose my patience with him. "I told you it goes all the way up through the goddamn roof. He probably just dropped in on her." "I want you to come look at this again," he said with a bit of hesitancy. Reluctantly, I went to the living room wall with him, and we looked in through the beams. The part of the wall above that was clearly not away. It was the way it was on the day the bones of the woman were found. I could see clearly as the shafts between the beams continued to the second floor, and the gnawed struts above that. But the slit of light revealing the hole in the roof was gone. For a moment, I imagined I saw a glint of yellow firelight, but that moment passed quickly. A trick of the darkness. There was nothing above the gaps in the framework, only blackness. "I thought you said there was a hole that went all the way through the roof," Ken asked. We hadn't ever been up to the attic, and now Kendrick was insisting that we find a way. "I've had enough of this place," I demanded, "and I don't care what's up there. It doesn't matter. We need to get the hell out of here. That's what I think." "But you said there was a hole all the way up," he said. "It's not that I'm questioning you, but aren't you curious? The hole in the roof is gone." I felt a sinking feeling in my gut. You don't spend 7 years of your life with someone without beginning to learn to read their mind. I don't want to go up there, I said. But in the end, I lost the argument, as I knew I would from the onset. Kendrick found our painter's ladder in the garage, and together we carried it up the staircase to the opening to the attic. With the drawcord gone, I found myself hopeful that he wouldn't be able to open the doorway at all. I just knew deep down that it would be locked somehow from the inside. Ken stuck the flat end of a screwdriver into the seam and pulled it open easily. As the door came down into the upstairs hallway, the ladder behind it began to slide out on its own, and we needed to move our own painter's ladder out of the way so that it could extend fully. I didn't want to follow him up into that dark space above the second floor hallway, but I didn't feel like there was any other choice. Ominous feelings hung over me like storm clouds, and I knew I couldn't let him venture into that darkness alone. The unfinished attic room was empty. Beams extended out from the opening with not so much as plywood flooring attached. The spaces between were filled with rolled-out layers of insulation. Mounds and mounds of cotton candy fiberglass waiting to dig microscopic cuts into your skin and leave you itching for hours. I breathed in a dark, damp smell, the pungent rot of mildew and mold. The air in the attic felt oppressive and wet. The hole in the roof was small, but easy to spot by the light that filtered through it, and the small, errant drifts of snow that were gathering between the beams beneath. "That's strange," Kendrick remarked to himself. It was strange, but not unexpected, at least not by me. I knew the hole was there. I saw it days ago reaching up and out between the beams of the walls downstairs. What was strange was that when we looked today from the ground floor, there was no hole in the roof at all. And yet here it was, as plain as ever, with snowflakes drifting down from it one by one, and down through the walls of the house to the bottom floor. Then, for a moment, something moved across it and blocked out the sun. It happened so quickly that if I'd blinked, I might have missed it. Kendrick didn't seem to notice. He moved closer to the opening, and I felt a knot in my throat. Had I imagined that moment when the sunlight disappeared? Had something blocked the opening for that moment? Had someone blocked the opening when we'd looked up through the hole from the bottom floor? I got a strange feeling that we were not alone in that darkness. Something was there with us. Something was there watching us. It was the stalker. I could feel him there, in the dark, and I found myself shuddering, but not against the cold of the snow as it drifted in. Kendrick moved near the opening in the roof and towards the large mound of the insulation. It seemed to be piled up there in incongruence with the rest of the neatly laid and packed fiberglass that sat between the other beams. He lifted something up from it. I couldn't see what he held. I was too far behind, and the attic crawl space was nothing more than ubiquitous darkness to me. He might have been holding anything in his hand. "This is my fucking slipper," he said finally. "How the fuck did my slipper?" Something moved then against the ceiling, a quiet scampering sound that both of us heard against the light wind that breathed snow through the opening of the roof, and we both grew quiet at the sound. I stopped breathing in order to hear it more clearly, but it stopped as abruptly as it began. Kendrick turned to me in the dark. I could only see his silhouette against the dim winter light that filtered through the hole in the roof, but I could feel his eyes on me and the fear they seemed to convey without words. "Did you hear that?" he asked quietly. I hissed at him in a whispered shh. But whatever it was that lingered in the darkness, occupying the attic with us, knew it was discovered, and decided during this brief exchange it no longer cared that we knew it was there. It moved along the struts of the roof in a rapid scramble, and began to rasp in a harsh, breathy tones. Ruined it all, William Cantor, eater of shit. Ruined it all," it muttered as it scampered along the ceiling from the corner behind me. I saw it then, in the harsh winter light that filtered down through the opening. A dark shape that clung to the rafters of the ceiling as the snow continued to lightly fall through and into the dark attic. It was as thin as a shadow, and as agile and as cunning in its movement as a spider. It appeared to be covered in a thin layer of dark fur that glistened in the dim light. I realized then it must have watched us the entire time we'd lived there. I wondered if it touched us while we slept, or what other missing things of ours it stole from us and ate. Our toenail clippings? Things from our garbage? I wanted to scream, but found I couldn't.
Mine is mine,
it rasped, glaring at me with yellow fire glowing behind its eyes.
Susanna was mine. Kendrick was meant to be mine. Mine is mine.
It screamed as its voice seemed to bellow out from it like a legion of voices speaking at once. 1,000 voices, all rasping, angrily, and staring at me, through me. The dark spider that spoke angrily at me from the attic ceiling moved towards me then. I expected it to come straight for me and attack, to rip me limb from limb. But instead it scampered between the beams and then up through the hole in the roof. Nothing the size of that thing should have fit through the small gap, but it slid through the slot with ease, fitting as though it were as thin as a shadow. When it was gone, I breathed a sigh of relief, but perhaps a moment too soon. Its hand reached back through the hole as the snow continued to swirl around it from the opening, and something flew at me through the darkness, fluttering on dark wings like a bat and striking me squarely in the forehead. I knelt to pick it up from between the rows of insulation. Even in the dark, I recognized the diary by the feel of its worn leather cover. Once again, it was covered in splotchy growths of mold. Clear to me now as a set of handprints left by the creature to whom the diary belonged. Once the house was cleared of our belongings, we hired a handyman to close the gap in the roof and rebuild the living room wall. We paid to update and remodel the bathrooms and kitchen. We put the house on the market and sold it quickly. The new owner was a single father and his daughter. We felt bad, but not bad enough to reject their offer. We just wanted to get rid of the place. The final straw for us was the return of the diary. When it was flung at me, another loose page fluttered out. In the attic nest, we found that both Kendrick's comb and the missing slipper were gnawed at. Pieces missing and swallowed away by the thing that stole them. The loose slip of paper held an ominous message.
She used to be in there, but now she's not. I think she's gone away. I can't feel her there anymore. I'm empty like I was before. But there's hope. Oh, there's hope. I licked the stubble of his beard away from the bathroom sink. I ate the strands he left behind in his comb and lapped at the piss at the sides of the bowl he left for me to drink. I took it all inside, like hungry little scraps he'd left for me to find. I could taste his essence inside every shadow in our home, and I felt so much less alone. I can feel the fullness growing like before. Soon I'll consume him like I consumed her, and, at least for a little while, I won't be quite so lonely anymore.